Welcome to the Authors on the Air Global Radio Network podcast. Let's join Mackie Morris in the book room. Today's guest is a fantasy and speculative author, Kait Waterhouse. We'll be discussing her new debut novel, A Stirring from the Depths. But before we dive in, let's peek into her book.
She is a bringer of balance, a friend to the sea. I am a demon, a bringer of death. The ancient ritual of deep sacrifice was so ingrained in me that it was all I was. All the love in the world could not save me from myself. I was cursed, damned. Curiosity would be her downfall.
Hi, thank you for joining me at the Authors on the Air. Kait Waterhouse, welcome.
Hi, Maki. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be great. So the story is really interesting, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what the story is about, and maybe tell us more about the Irish folklore, because I'm kind of not familiar with that.
Yeah, I'd love to. So, A Stirring from the Depths is deeply inspired by Irish folklore. I've always been really interested in Selkies and other creatures that have sad or tragic folktales attached to them. So I was doing some reading about Selkies, and I was thinking, what would happen if a Selkie had a happily ever after? And if you don't know, a Selkie is a creature that's found in Finnish folktales all the way to Ireland. And they are creatures that have sealskin coats that when they wear them, they look like seals, and they can take them off and become human. And there's all kinds of stories about how long Selkies can walk on land, or what happens if you steal their coat. And generally, those stories end in tragedy. So I wanted to give a Selkie a happy ending. And then I started thinking about other creatures in Celtic mythology. And I was really drawn to that of a Kelpie. Kelpies are found in Scottish and Irish folklore, and they are shapeshifters like Selkies, but they look like horses, big black horses, and they're kind of a cautionary tale. People say don't go to rivers, avoid lakes, ponds, because there might be a Kelpie, which looks like a horse, entices humans to take a ride, and brings them down into the bottom of the river where they drowned. So I thought, okay, I've got this two creatures who have really sad or scary histories around them. How can I bring them together and give them both redemption and an opportunity to find some kind of peace?
That's really cool. Because the Kelpies that invites is it always a female that they invite, or is it just, it doesn't matter?
In lots of folktales, sometimes it's children, sometimes it's it isn't, but a lot of times it's like the Kelpie is looking for a bride.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay. So what I really loved about your book is the eloquence of your sentence. It was just, every sentence was just so beautifully crafted. I was just hooked with, from page one. It was just so beautiful. I'm just wondering, what went into just thinking about constructing all the sentences that are just not something that is used in the conversational sense, but it was just beautiful.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. The book is written in first person perspective. So when I was writing, I was thinking about the era that this would take place, and I came up with kind of the Romantic era, late 1800s. When we have this mix of like new industrial technology and old, right, like folkloric times. And so I had to think, how would my characters speak? Not only are they in Ireland, so I was trying to like capture the prose and the lilt of somebody with an Irish accent, but they're also immortal and living in very different realms. And I wanted my prose to reflect a folktale. I wanted them to be lyrical and flowing. So it took a lot of getting into my characters' heads. I didn't normally when I write, I have a TV show on or a movie playing or music. This book, I wrote it in silence because I was so focused on making sure that I could get Kian and Iona to be distinct and still kind of carry that lyrical, folkloric type prose. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, actually, you actually did a really great job of multiple POVs, because I've read other books where, there's a multiple characters talking, but they all sound the same. And if the chapter is not labeled a different people's names, I would think it was just a one person speaking. But your chapters, as he flips back and forth between the characters, I mean, you could definitely tell the difference. So did you get into character whenever you wrote that chapter, when it was, talking about Kian or, the other one? So I just wonder, how did you differentiate so well?
Really, when I was plotting, I was thinking about, how I wanted the story to progress. And while I was considering my plot points, I was thinking, okay, who needs to tell this side of the story? Because the story is going, from beginning to end, and we're getting snippets from Kian and Iona back and forth. So while I was coming up with my plans, I was thinking, okay, Kian really needs to be the one seeing this and giving us his perspective. And then, the other way around when there was something particularly poignant for Iona's character development or plot structure. I did actually write I wrote in consecutive order. I did not switch. I didn't just write Iona's chapters and then Kian's chapters. I would write Iona and then I would write Kian and then I would write Iona and then I would write Kian. And I think that helped me actually keep them in conversation with each other, to keep those dualities in my mind.
No, it was impressively done. I just have to say, it was really, really well done.
Thank you.
So there's a magical thing that you mentioned, the glamour. I thought that was really interesting. Where does that come from? Is it part of the Irish folklore, or is it something you came up with?
So a lot of Irish fairy tales, folk tales, and other traditions throughout the world, there is this idea of magic that masks something or makes something appear to be something else. And that is found in Irish and a lot of just Celtic mythology in general. So if you think about, I don't know if you know about changelings, where it was believed that if you had a child that was crying incessantly, or they were sick, or they weren't eating or doing well, that a fairy had actually changed your baby with a fairy baby and transformed it to look like a human. And that's why it was doing badly, because it wasn't human. So I really loved that. And being that both the characters are shapeshifters, I wanted Kian to kind of have this additional leg up, but it's also a responsibility that he bears. So his ability to glamour things by making them appear different is definitely rooted in other folktales as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, okay, let's get to the hot stuff. Let's talk about sex scenes.
Yes.
Because, a lot of sex scenes are very mechanical, but yours just flow like a poetry. I mean, it was just beautifully done. How did you make it your own? I mean, really, it was just really different. It was beautiful and it was different.
So again, I had to think about my characters and their experiences prior to being with each other. And the sex scene is written in Iona. The first one is written in Iona's point of view. And so I had to think about, her experiences and what she would be what her role would be in a sexual encounter. And for me, it really came down to the characters and what they would seek out and what they would need. So for instance, Iona being very much the one in control and the one taking charge, because she's used to being this singular being that is always making the decisions. So that just comes innately to her. And Kian is ever this gentleman, always trying to woo and charm women. So of course he wants to be the one to be complimentary and sweet. And at the same time, he's just got this immense yearning for Iona. So again, it really did come down to me, like just thinking about what does each character here need? And something else that I really leaned into was the fact that Iona is so separate from humans. She's not a human in any way. Unlike Kian, who has experience with humans and interacts with them, she is herself. And so I really wanted that to kind of shine in the sex scene as well, that she does what she will do. Yeah.
I really love that about her. She's very strong, and there's a soft side to her, even though she spends most of her time with seals out in the ocean, right?
Yeah, she's definitely
But
that, like,
Kian knows how to
protector.
court.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for her, but there's a soft side of her that comes out when she's with Kian, and I really love that side of her that shows up when she's with him.
Yeah, that was
So
really fun to write, like her gradual wearing down of being around Kian, from going to not being able to stand him, from saying like, okay, you're an idiot, but I love you. I don't know why.
Yeah. And so the Kian character is really interesting because every time he tried to be sweet and he tried to kind of be complimentary, I just felt like he was just trying to get her into the lake, just drown her. And it took me a while to realize that he really cared about her. So you did that really well too. Like I just kept on like waiting for him to just be him.
Yeah, that was one of my challenges writing this book, was making sure that you, the reader, was mistrustful of Kian, because you should be. He's not a good creature. But at the same time, being able to see his qualities and to be able to see, I mean, he's not a human, but to see the humanity within him. So kind of that balance, like I wanted you to be irritated by him just the way Iona is. And I wanted you to be worried and suspicious of his actions until he, proves himself slowly throughout the book. So I'm really glad that came through.
Yeah, so you did well. Definitely. I was not trusting of him all the way to like really pretty close to the end. I kept on looking, what page am I on? So it was really great.
Thank you.
So is there going to be is this a standalone, or do you see yourself doing a sequel with these characters?
This is definitely a standalone. Like I said, I wanted it to be a folktale, kind of a reimagining. So I wrote it in a like cyclical pattern with a beginning and an end to make sure that the story had that happily ever after. So I would hate to drag Iona and Kian on another adventure that would put them in jeopardy. I think they deserve their happiness for now.
So are you working on a next project? What are you working on?
Yes, I am always working on the next project. Right now, I am drafting a high fantasy that's got swords and magic and a really creepy forest type monster. That's really only in the beginning stages. I think I've got maybe 10,000 words in. And I hopefully will have some exciting publishing news on I wrote a urban fantasy that is Greek mythology inspired. So for any readers who are like, I loved the Celtic mythology in this, hopefully soon I'll have some information on my urban fantasy that's mythology from Greece. And then I'm just querying. I've got a YA manuscript that I'm hoping to find a home for, that's a creepy YA secret garden retelling that's in a defunct Northern California vineyard.
Wow, that sounds really interesting. I hope we get to interview you on that book as well.
I love that.
I know you've done a lot of like a book signing. Do you have anything new coming up, or are you doing anything on that?
Yeah, actually, the Tucson Festival of Books, which is on March 15th and 16th this year, I will have a booth in the Indie Author Pavilion for a couple hours on Sunday, which I'm looking forward to. And in May, I have the Enemies and Lovers Romantasy Book Convention in Mesa, Arizona.
Wow.
That is, I think it's May 10th, the weekend of May 10th. So I'll have a booth there all weekend. And I'm really looking forward to meeting more fantasy readers in the Arizona area.
Okay, so we'll definitely put those on the YouTube to put it. Make
Thank
sure you put
you.
those dates for you, so they'll come and visit you. This has been a great conversation with you, Kate. I'm so proud of what you've done because I watched you, query and fail and query again, and here you are. So this book is really beautiful, and I hope other people would, read it and enjoy it as much as I did. But I want to thank you
You.
so much for joining me today.
Thank you. It was so nice to get to chat with you. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you for joining our podcast. We hope you visit again as we discover new books to read. Sneak peek video previews provided by MDP and Mackie Morris.